took a second to just appreciate just the opportunity and just fully, it just showed me the type of ball coach that I really could be. And just the belief that he had, somebody that's been coaching so long. Like, I have no connection with Coach Fritz at all. He's been the head coach for over 30 years, and for him to believe in me to be a position coach at a Power 4 stop for him for the first time in his career, it just meant the world to me. And it just made me feel like from that moment, I'm not letting that dude down. Like, I'm going to make sure I'm going to be the best possible position coach I'm going to be. Like, I'm striving to be that, for him. And that's what I did. And it was just a great opportunity, and it was a great moment for my family, my wife, my kids. It was awesome.
Welcome to Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. Each episode pulls back the curtain on the coaching profession, spotlighting voices from every level of the game and offering lessons and insights for your own path. But first, a word from CoachComm.
When the game's on the line, your play call can mean the difference between winning and losing. Don't let poor communication cost you the game. For 35 years, CoachComm has been the trusted leader in coaching communication, delivering solutions with unmatched sound quality, performance, and durability. That's why thousands of coaches in high schools across the country trust CoachComm. You put in the hours to prepare. Make sure your communication delivers when it counts. CoachComm, giving coaches the ultimate competitive edge. Visit CoachComm.com to learn more.
Follow Inside the Headset on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content. If you enjoyed this episode, please give it a like and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. We drop new episodes each week, so hit that follow button and never miss a moment. Now, let's get inside the headset.
Coach Ross, what's happening, man? How you doing?
What's happening? Everything good, man. Everything's going well for sure.
Good, man. Well, it's good to see you. Obviously, you were part of this previous 35 and 35 class. Got to know you a little bit, and super excited about spending 45 minutes or so with you and learning a little bit about you, your past, and how you've navigated through this profession. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the first question we always ask is, when did you know you wanted to be a part of this great profession?
Yeah. So for me, with my career playing at University of Michigan, you always, it's funny. I was road tripping with my family, and I watched a bunch of these podcasts, and it's kind of the same kind of story and how everybody got it started. But, my career was done football wise, as far as had a shot with the Chargers and got cut. And, in that moment, you try to figure out what it is that you want to do and how you're going to go about your rest of your life. You know what I mean? And it was kind of a lot of different things, but I had a mentor as far as William Tandy that took a job at a high school, Detroit Loyola. That was actually Derek Harmon, who just got drafted by the Steelers. He was a freshman on that team, but he wanted me to be the defensive coordinator. And, knowing what I know now, based off what I knew then, like I was not fit for it whatsoever, but, I contemplated on it, and it was just a switch that flipped that, like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to give all I have to it. So I got all my playbooks that I ever had, playing, and just kind of really devoted myself to it and lost myself in it. And I still had the aspirations to continue to play, in the football. They had the spring league at the time. And I ended up, hurting my knee at that. And, but I just completely gave myself to it. And I learned that just as much passion I had playing the game, I had the same coaching. The only difference was I wasn't sore after the game. And I told my wife that, and I was like, I think I really enjoy it. And, part of it is my brother, he's 5 years younger than me. I've been coaching my whole life. He's playing in the NFL right now with the Seahawks. Okay. And, I just kind of realized I already had some of those qualities. So that's kind of what it did for me was once I was done with football, losing myself, giving a group of high school guys from inner city Detroit the opportunities that they normally don't get at a place like that, taking them to schools, colleges, and places like that, and just realizing how much joy that brought me, and that's kind of what brought me into the profession.
Yeah, now I do have to hit the pause button and rewind, because you said you listen to the podcast and a lot of people start off the same, kind of getting the same way now. All Big Ten freshmen in 2012, 188 tackles, career tackles, 16 and a half tackles for a loss. I don't think many of us had as good a career as maybe what you had and had the opportunity to play in the league. But yeah, for sure. I mean, you kind of at some point in time we find an ending of playing ball, and it's hard. I mean, especially I think it's probably harder for you than it was for me, where I didn't have the accolades. It was, while I was playing college football, I was kind of seeing the ending coming a little bit more, where you're, by the time you're done, you're thinking you're going to go have a long career in the league. And so being able to let go can be difficult. And just out of curiosity, because I think that's something that, whenever it comes up, we do spend some time talking about it. I think everybody at some point in their career, when they hang those cleats up for that last time, man, it's emotional. It's a little bit of lost identity that kind of goes on. How do you prepare some of your players that you've dealt with? Because you've been at Cincinnati, been at Tulane, currently at University of Houston. You've been at places where guys are going to go to the league. How do you talk a little bit about kind of that ending?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest thing, and talk about it. With my dad coming up, is just really living life with no regret. And in order to do that, you got to completely give everything you absolutely have to whatever it is that you're doing.
Right.
The way you do anything is how you do everything. You hear that 1,000 times, but the reality is, if you are able to give everything you have for that purpose at that moment, it don't matter what happens. You know what I mean? Because you can live at peace with yourself. And at the end of the day, yes, this game is going to end whether you are a Hall of Fame NFL football player, or if you don't even get an opportunity to go to a college level or, the NFL level. So it's going to end. But how are you, what are you willing to do while you have this opportunity? And then when it is all said and done, can you look back at yourself and say, I did everything I can do?
Absolutely. Now, obviously you have the opportunity to kind of extend your career a little bit. But ultimately your first opportunity was to come back in GA in Michigan. Just talk a little bit about, first and foremost, how you got that opportunity a few years removed from being done.
Yeah. So, for me, like I said, I jumped right into being a defensive coordinator at a high school level.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, it was an inner city school, so they didn't have some of the resources. Detroit Loyola. Now they kind of, got that thing rolling a little bit over there. But, I didn't have any ambition to be a college coach or anything like that. Honestly, and I tell kind of some of the guys that I encounter when they ask about my route, like I personally had some not great examples of, coaches in this profession. Not saying they're bad guys, but I'm a very big time family guy. Like that's the most important thing for me. And I came across coaches kind of when I was playing that really weren't, that was just kind of like running away from their family. They spent all night in the office. And I'm like, I never want to be that guy.
Yeah.
And I just thought like, in order to be a coach, you had to be a guy who didn't value family, who was always away from your kids, because that was just some of the examples that I saw. But I also saw some really great examples as well. But I just realized if you're just a bad husband, you're a bad husband. It don't matter what profession you do. If you're a bad, father, you're a bad father. So once I realized that, that kind of, when I devoted myself to Detroit Loyola and just gave them everything I had, I just was giving them from a standpoint of, okay, these guys have never been to a college campus before. Let me take them. So we set them up on a 7-on-7, long story short, and it was in Toledo, and it got rained out. Now, in Detroit, it's not a lot of money going around, so we had ordered these buses.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, I'm not about to let this go to waste. Well, I'm going to go where I know. I'm going to go to Ann Arbor. And luckily, they had a camp going on that day, and we went there, and I was like, I'm going to just do a tour of the facility and all of that with nothing behind it, no motive. I went there. And I go in there and Coach Harbaugh, sure enough, in the off season is in his office. I'm like, all right, cool. Let me sit around and wait for this guy. And I was really about to leave, and he finally, let me come in, and I talked to him. I just tell him what I'm doing, and I told him I'm a high school defensive coordinator, all that, and I really don't know what this profession is all about, but I got these kids here. I'd love for you to come meet them and all that. And he's giving me a spiel. He's like, yeah, that sounds good. Well, we got a defensive GA spot opening next year. Why don't you just come on and be a graduate assistant?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? Like I had no idea what that really meant. And I also think like sometimes when you are working for like your alma mater, especially in an early position like that, kind of going and segue and talking about that transition of knowing when enough's enough and you got to detach yourself from the players, like it's almost like a crutch because you're so comfortable.
Yeah.
Like everybody, the coaches, and you know how to maneuver. And, so it was one of those things that I didn't realize how great of an opportunity that was until it was I was gone from that opportunity. So, that's kind of how I got that role, was just on a random, I think Sunday, rained out day. I went over there just so the guys could see, kind of, what University of Michigan is all about. And a lot of those guys won't be able to make it to that, but just wanted to make it where it felt like obtainable. It was reachable. You can touch it. You see it. And that's what I did. And because of that, that opportunity just happened.
And you took it and ran with it. Now, you said something that kind of honestly gave me some goosebumps a little bit, because this is where my passion lies. I think a lot of coaches, their passion lies in being a good husband and being a good father. And there is definitely, head guys that are doing tremendous jobs in this profession that, man, the family thing is maybe not the first thing on their pecking order. Obviously, it's a ton of pressure to win games. It's a ton of pressure to, bring in great recruits, and that takes time, it takes effort, it takes, all these different things. A lot of times when you enter the college realms, those first couple jobs, man, there's not much time for family. So, it seems like you recognized it early, and I don't know, maybe you're speaking from hindsight, but it seemed like in that moment you kind of knew, like, hey, family's important, man, and I want to be a good dad. I want to be a good husband. I want to be at home and watch my kid grow. Like, how did you navigate that part of the profession as you took some jobs where a lot of times, it's going to come with a lot of hours?
Yeah, it was definitely difficult because, as you know, like, you can still be in a job where they don't, like, hey, bro, you better be in that office, and you better be putting in some hours, and it's almost like a desk guarding situation. And it's not that I'm not a grinder. I grind with the best with them, but what it is like understanding how important. I just look at my sons and me being in their lives, in whichever way, just the memories that they have. I never want to be like, all right, your dad could be this ultimate great coach, but you was never in his life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then he grows up with this resentment. Like, you can't change that. So I kind of got to a point where I'm probably going to lose some opportunities because I'm make sure my kids feel their dad in their life every single day. And my wife is feel like she has support from me. And that might not be appealing to a lot of different guys, that are running programs. And that's cool. Like, that's okay. It's nothing if that's their own deal. But for me, we talk about that in, like, the interview process. Like, my family, I can't be my best self if I ain't got these dudes running around this hallway right here. You know what I mean? Like, and it was very difficult starting off because you can't control that. You know what I'm saying? Because you are the lowest on the totem pole. But one of the things that I remember that I kind of took a stance on was my son's first birthday, and it was after it was kind of during the season or whatever like that. But we had some time. And I went to his birthday, and they kind of gave me a little bit of crap because I went to my son's birthday. But it's like, I'm willing to take that, what comes with that now, making sure everything that from my role is done and done the right way and not rushed. But at the same time, I got to be able to be there for my son. That means a lot to me because my dad was meant a lot to me growing up, and I wouldn't be here because without him, and my mom. That was kind of what went with that.
That's huge, man. I love the fact that you're saying that, and I a lot of times in programs, a term that is used for that culture is family, and we say it and we put it on the walls and we slap it on the way out the locker room and stuff like that. But we don't always live it, and I'm probably more invested into this side of this conversation right now because I remember I had an opportunity to speak the first year I got done coaching. And took this job at the AFCA, and it was a panel, and it was some dudes up there, and it was a bunch of guys that were looking to get in the profession from the NFL, some current NFL high school coaches, and they were talking about the interview process. They were going down the line, everybody, you want to make sure you got, some cut-ups, some teach tape, and all this kind of stuff. And I said, they finally made it to me. I was the last guy on the stage, and I said, man, you need to interview them. I was like, you're going to be in some situations where you need a job, and you can't afford to be maybe too picky. But if you're in a situation where you can be picky, man, you need to interview them. Make sure somebody you want to be around. Make sure somebody's going to let you see your family, be the father that you want to be. And, I was expecting some big round of applause, and everybody's looking like, man, hey, I don't care. If they interview me, they got some money, I'm going to take the job. I was like, you got to get in the business a little bit to understand that because, sometimes you got to make some sacrifices for fam, and it's important, man. And so I appreciate you sharing that. Now, kind of back to Michigan, right? So you did not know Coach Harbaugh at this point in time. You played for somebody different.
No, I did. I played with Coach Hope for 3 years, and then Harbaugh was 2015. I was his first first year.
That was
Yeah,
and you were on the way out that year.
Yeah, that was my senior year.
That was your senior year. Okay, so y'all had a previous relationship, and
yeah,
like you said, he'd offered you a Big Ten job, and you're just kind of like, okay, cool. And
like, all right, hey, I think I'll do that.
Yeah, and so the fall comes, or whenever it's time for you to show up. How were you able to kind of distance yourself, because there were still some players that might have been freshmen, so maybe you didn't have some of those type of relationships, or maybe you were already in a leadership role to where maybe they didn't look at you like that. But how did you distance yourself, even if it wasn't about the individuals as a player, but just distance yourself as a player at Michigan into a coach at Michigan?
Yeah, so for me, it was actually funny. I got in, I knew about this in the summer and knew I was coming in the winter, so I had like a whole whatever season to get my mind ready for me to be able to be that. But I was always kind of a lot mature for my age as far as just the way I handled my business on a day-to-day basis. I really wasn't a guy who did like a lot of partying and all that type of stuff, and just was. Now, don't get me wrong, college was college, and it's meant to be fun. But at the same time, like I lived by myself after my sophomore season with my girlfriend, who's not my wife at the time. Like I kind of was very level-headed coming up. So that transition to being a coach, it wasn't really that difficult for me, because I already had my alignment. Things were in alignment. What was the priority? I'm not trying to be super buddy with all the guys. It was more so about being respected, and that was kind of why I love playing a game of football. It wasn't. Nowadays there's a million different distractions with college football, but the thing about me, why I enjoyed it, was because the respect you gain from the guys that's around you. At the end of the day, they might not like you, but they know if that dude is on the field doing something, he's going to do it the right way, and he's going to do it as hard as he possibly can. And I take that same approach with coaching. Like, it's a respect factor, and when it comes to coaching, they got to know and trust that you're going to do everything you can to put them in the best position to be successful. So that's all it came down to.
Yeah. Now, you obviously had that opportunity at Detroit Loyola, and I think probably where you found your love of the game, being able to pour into people, being able to, like you said, in that inner city kind of environment, be able to provide some insight to players that otherwise probably would never had an opportunity to go to the University of Michigan and just check out the campus and see it and believe that they can make it out of there. What was one of your takeaways in those first couple of years as a GA in regards to just how you viewed the profession, whether it's from an X&O standpoint, how you handle your business standpoint, but what was something you really took away from that first experience?
Yeah, I mean, funny thing is I think most guys who played, especially played at a high level or just played at any level in general, you sit in them staff rooms, and sometimes things are said about certain guys. You're like, dang, I wonder what was said about me when I was playing. But just, you realize all that goes into it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And how much preparation goes into it. And it just completely immersed me in just all the things that, not only do you have to have a great connection with your players, but you have to have a great plan for your players. And then you got to work that plan. And, as a GA, I feel like, you sit back, you never really asked to do much other than, breaking down film, all these different things. And I had the privilege of running a scout team, and I took that with pride. But, like, you're not really asked to, like, be put in a situation where you got to do certain drills or things like that. So you kind of, in your mind, everything is like, I'd do it differently if I was doing it. Like, this is how I would do it I had great coaches that I learned from in that process, that 3 years there. Don Brown being, the guy that I, just a mastermind defensively, and just seeing how his approach to the game. And he called himself the oldest GA in the country. He drew every one of his cards. He didn't ask us to draw one card. And he said it felt like he was able to run the plays before they even happened. And, just even Coach Harbaugh, just how his approach on everything, his love for the game, and just his passion over everything. And just seeing how all of those things came together to essentially, have a team. It was just very exciting for me to be a part of all of that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that is always eye-opening, regardless of how good of a player or I don't want to say bad of a player or, good of a player or not you were. I think the first time you really get to see how it's cooked behind the scenes is eye opening, and you realize it's, you were grinding as a player for that opportunity at the league, but there was a whole different grind kind of going on behind the scenes that you weren't prepared for. And I also think that, I would call myself a high IQ football player when I was in college. I mean, I knew the playbook, I knew what other guys were doing. My coaches recognized that. And then you get behind the scenes, you're like, man, I don't know nothing. I don't know anything, man. Like, I thought I knew it all. I don't know much. And so, regardless, I think that's something that stands out. And that's why you see coaches that are successful that play in the league, like Jim Harbaugh. You see coaches that are successful that didn't even touch a college football field, didn't even play in high school. Just as long as you're kind of willing to put in the work behind the scenes, I think there's a lot to it. Now, after spending a couple of years there in Michigan, you get the opportunity to coach the linebackers in 21 at Hope College. Just talk a little bit about how that opportunity transpired, and you mentioned living with girlfriend or in college who turns out to be wife, so obviously she's on this journey with you. How did that dialogue go to say, hey, honey, look, we're going to Hope College?
Yeah. So it was around that time it was coming off that COVID year, so it wasn't like a lot of movement like that as far as the profession. I had some opportunities and interviews and things, and everything wasn't working out, and then you go back and you play the game of, man, I should have did this, I should have did that. Like, throughout being a GA for 3 years, you're given opportunities, and it's not the sexy opportunity where it's like, oh yeah, I'm doing that. It's just like, go coach at a HBCU. Like, do I really want to do, like, and then you play it back, fast forward, like, dang, I should have took that.
Yeah.
But essentially, coming off the COVID year, it wasn't, the best for job opportunity, especially for a young guy like myself. But anyway, I ended up getting a random phone call from a guy that, was a head coach at East Grand Rapids a few years ago, back when I played for Orchard Lake St. Mary's, and we made it to the state championship numerous amount of times. And the head coach, who was not a head coach at Hope College, Peter Sturzman, just gave me a call and was like, look, I know you're looking, Steve Kasula, who's now at Michigan as a tight ends coach. He's a guy that's heavy involved with west side of Michigan. Just told him I was looking, and he was like, man, I had a whole lot of respect for you as a football player, coaching against you for all this time, and I know we really don't know each other, but it's just, I would really love if you just came and just check this place out, and just, see if there's something you would be willing to do. And mind you, like, this is one of those pivotal moments that, like, you got to make a decision. Like, it wasn't the most money in the world, but it was an opportunity. And my wife really stood 10 toes down behind me, and we actually had to move from, Ann Arbor, Canton area to the complete other side of Michigan, which is about 3.5 hours to Holland, Michigan. And that's convincing. Like, if my wife wasn't the way she was, she had, an online job as a crisis counselor. She got her master's and all that. She kind of just really took the brunt of everything financially to allow me to be able to do that. And I, to this day, believe like that was the biggest jump that I made as far as, now I have to be a position coach. And like I said earlier, like, you was a GA with all those answers, right? But now you the guy that's running the room.
Right. And
not only you running a room, you're running a room full of a lot of D3 level kids that, the passion is there. Like, that's what I learned about D3. The passion is there. They already know, like, I ain't making it to the NFL, but all I got is right now. So they take advantage of it every day, but they're not the most gifted athletes. And they just don't know ball. Like I'm coming from University of Michigan, where you got guys like, Jordan Lewis, Jabril Peppers, like all these type of caliber athletes, to that. And so I'm going on level 100 day one.
Yeah.
And I've realized ain't nobody hearing nothing I'm saying. So I had to really tone everything back down, and I'm out of breath because I'm coaching so hard, and I just don't even, you know what I mean? Like, I learned how to be a really good teacher at Hope. Yeah. And I had to take those steps back to really fully understand and grasp just this profession and how you, what you say in a meeting room, how those guys receive it. You might have a vision of, you think you saying it a certain way, but it ain't coming across nothing like that. So that was just a very huge moment, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity. You know, on paper, it don't look the best, but honestly, for me, it really brought everything together, everything that what I've learned at Michigan to that moment then.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. And that's one of the things that hopefully, for listeners of the podcast can really recognize is like you go down your list, played in Michigan, all Big Ten, GA'd in Michigan, you know, after this hope stop, Cincinnati, Tulane. And I mean, I guarantee you, you know, and I don't know your story thoroughly, but like, I mean, that Hope College stop was probably huge for you. It's your first time you had a room, and you're exactly right. I mean, you know, I kind of experienced the same thing. I coached FBS, FCS, Division II, Division III. And to say that I coach every kid the same, you know, obviously within the same room, you most of the time don't coach every kid the same. But if you go in there and approach those kids like they're all trying to make it to the league. When I was at Davidson College, and them dudes had interns making $80K internships in the summer, and they didn't have no, you know, dreams of playing in the league. They were finance majors and all that kind of stuff, and it's just eye opening. Some of the things that you can go and learn, and some of the hats you have to wear when you have a job like that. You know, talk a little bit about being at Hope College, and then, you know, not just being the linebackers coach, but I'm sure there was a ton of other things that came with that.
Yeah, so you know, that's another just eye-opening thing is like, that's when I started to realize, like, shoot, I had a pretty good opportunity at Michigan that a lot of people probably dream of getting, but, you know, I was able to be the diversity and inclusion, you know, connoisseur pretty much where other university. And then also I was equipment manager. And from a perspective of I'm ordering equipment, I'm getting helmets refurbished. I got a young student staff that we're doing the laundry and making sure everything is in alignment, and just having a full blown just amount of respect for those guys that do that on a daily basis, because a lot goes into it on top of, you know, coaching and all that. It just was something that I needed at the moment to truly understand just what this whole thing is about. And, you know, I like I say, that whole time of being there was just completely awesome. Cause I was able to, like, you know, do those small tasks and recruiting as a D3 football coach, man, I'm saying, bro, it ain't even about you. It's really just, I mean, I guess nowadays it's about the money, but it's really, what kind of package could you get me that I'm not feeling, you know what I mean? And you get so many connections with these guys, but at the end of the day, the package ain't right, and they can't go there because they scholarship ain't covered or whatever. It was just eye opening, man. And like I said, it was one of those things that just really grateful for being there with Coach Dersma, with Andrew Hawkin, who was the OC, and me and him butt heads every day because he was a Michigan State guy. And just all those guys back there, man, it was awesome.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. You know, I you probably can appreciate this a little bit as a, you know, just getting done GA and at Michigan and playing in Michigan. You know, we had my first college job. We had a game in West Texas A&M Commerce. I was at Texas A&M Commerce. It was a 7-hour trip. And I'm like, okay, so when we ordering the planes for this, right? Like, there's no way we getting on the bus for this. And, you know, it was a bus league. We were on that bus for 7 hours, and, you know, you found out how to break down film while you're sitting on the bus on your huddle and do all those kind of things, man. And I needed that. I'm happy I had that experience. I'm happy I got to paint lines. I'm happy I got to do the laundry, because when ultimately I ended up at the FBS program, you know, you appreciated a lot more of what those guys did behind the scenes. And as your career continues to blossom, you know, at some point in time, you might be sitting in one of those head chairs, and it'll give you a way different perspective on what it takes to, you know, to run the program beyond the X's and O's, beyond the coaches, beyond the players, you know. And so, yeah, man, I appreciate you kind of highlighting that. And so, you know, you have this opportunity in 2021 to serve as the linebackers coach. Really got to learn how to approach different people and wear many different hats. But the following year, you end up at Cincinnati. So once again, that's not a hop you tend to see, right? I mean, I can only imagine as you took the job at Hope, it was probably a little bit of, man, I hope I don't get stuck at this level, or, you know, get labeled as this type of coach. And to be able to kind of bounce back quickly at Cincinnati, I can only ask, how did that go down, and how did you manage to get that job? Yeah.
Well, first, while being at Hope, we had our defensive coordinator, Matthew Ricketts. He was there. He's like a lifer at Hope College. He retired as the defensive coordinator. And right after that season, they promote me to defensive coordinator. And, I was a guy who always grew up. I always wanted to be very prepared. And I remember that, we fast forward, but like when I was at Detroit Loyola and just everything I knew at that moment, and then just put myself back in them shoes, I had no clue.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not doing that again. So I just went and really I shut the door. And every single day, I just tried to break down the things that I was going to install, and just more so from every different position. And just how am I going to communicate with this coach who's working a 9-to-5 job, who's coming up in here, and how is he going to teach the players? And so I did that for about maybe 2 months or so after I got the defensive coordinator job, maybe a month. And then I get a random, text from, Luke Fickell. And I thought it was like a prank. Actually, I didn't even have his number saved. But he was like, hey, is this, James Ross? I'd love to talk to you. This is Luke Fickell. And then mind you, I'm a Michigan guy. So, I'm like, this is somebody messing with me. And so I reached back and, it was really him. And, we connect over phone a couple times. And he just said he's looking for a young, energetic guy. He heard that, and honestly, I'm doing myself a disservice and not telling the full story. Like I told you before, my wife is an absolute beast. She took it on her initiative to pretty much make my resume, and she's sending it out to everybody. I'm telling she like, I'm sending a resume. I said, that don't matter, right? You can send it to wherever you want to. All these jobs are talked about well before, right? So she like, I'm still doing it. I don't care what you're talking about. So she ends up sending it to the head coach that was at Youngstown State at the time, I believe. The Youngstown State, I might be getting that confused with another school. But anyway, she sends it to him, and Luke Fickell was actually best friends with the head coach. He's like, we don't got a spot for him, but hey, this guy, I know you're looking for a young dude. He's got a really good resume. He's from Michigan. You might have recruited him. And Fick did recruit me when I was coming up. And that's how that happened. It happened because my wife was sending my resume all out after I'm telling her that you making me look crazy. I know how coaches look at emails. They go right past them. And because of that, and I truly humbled myself to allow her to do whatever she wanted to do with that, is how I really got on his radar, is because of what she did. And like I said, at that point, I can't say nothing to her no more. She thinks she, whatever, but it's all good. She deserves it. So, so he texted me and all that happened, and we set up an interview, and pretty much what my interview was installing the defense that I've been preparing to install with the coaches for the last 2 months.
Yeah.
And I sat down with, the whole defensive staff that was there, Mike Tressel, Kerry Combs, Walt Stewart, and Coach Fickell. It was the most aggressive setup you can probably think of as far as an interview that I've ever been accustomed to. But I literally was so prepared for that moment, and just couldn't make it up. Everything that I was getting ready for, it didn't have nothing to do with me looking for another school, because I was at Hope. I literally was a week or the next day before I got this text message, I was supposed to sign a lease for a new house. Like, we was like, got a new baby. We're looking to just really immerse ourselves in Holland, Michigan. Like, that's just where we at. And then this opportunity just came out of nowhere. And, I was extremely prepared for it. And I think I crushed the interview. And then I got the job a couple of weeks later, and it was just one of the craziest moments. But had I not really, allowed my wife to just, be a part of this thing.
Yeah.
And, had I not been preparing myself to be the best possible defensive coordinator I could be at Hope College, then I wouldn't have been prepared for this opportunity,
Let me ask you 2 questions off that. The first question, I asked this one. I asked the second one first, just because we're kind of already talking about your wife. I think you're making a heck of a point. That's why, if you go back and listen to the podcast in the past, I always try to include the wife in the story whenever the coach brings it up, because this is just not one of those businesses where I can, go off to my accountant job and my wife can go off and do her thing, and then we just meet at home at 5 and we talk about our day and then just move on. It's, good or bad, there's definitely some buy-in from that significant other in this profession. And, I find the people that really do a good job in this business, the wife is all in, And as a coach, you're all in on your wife because you know what she's sacrificing to support you. And, that's just kind of crazy. That's very much how my wife was early on. And she, like, we'll joke around between each other. Like, that was my job. I helped you with those stuff when you were GA, and I did all that work. That's my degree,
Yeah.
And so just talk about the importance of that part, just the buy-in that, somebody that when she met you in college, you were just balling, you was playing football. She probably didn't even know you'd be a coach. And now all of a sudden she's immersed in this crazy profession that is volatile. Well, that, you're popular when you're hired and pretty much it just goes down from there. How do you incorporate her into this thing?
Yeah. I mean, I think that is when, this thing fully took off with me is when I realized like we are equal in this thing. It's not me going to be like, she is just as much a part of this thing as I am. And I had to, when that moment happened, it was like an aha, because I've been so much before, that opportunity happened where she would tell me her little things that she would have, like, maybe you should do this, maybe that. And it's like, as a man, you got so much ego. You doing it in this football thing, like you don't understand. Like, you don't know how it feels to be in these rooms with these guys, like these big time coaches. And like that ain't how you get jobs, is by emails and all that. Nobody looks at that. Like, and then I got to a point where I just allowed myself to just say, you're right. You know what I mean? Like, I hear you. Let's do it that way. I'm going to do everything I can on my part. If you feel like this is something that's going to help me, let's do it. And it's just like overnight, like something like that happened. And I think that it just, it's insane to even think about. Gives me goosebumps even, even thinking about. But reality is, man, my wife is with me no matter what through this thing. Right. No matter where I go, we take any job we take. She's in the car with me to go there, and she's right. She's sitting in the hotel they put me in. She's waiting to hear how the interview went. She's completely allowed me to be able to be my best self in this profession, and she does a great job raising our kids, and she's with them a lot. That's everything, and it's just amazing to see what she goes through on an everyday basis, and her allowing me to do this. But yeah, she's the reason why I'm here. I know so many great coaches say that, but like you say, that's the formula. You got to have that significant other all in, because it's hard to kind of play that tug of war game. You're not going to be your best self if you don't. So yeah, she definitely is that for me.
And now the second part of that question was, obviously you just got a heck of a promotion. And, if you were to stay at Hope College and be the DC, that wouldn't be too shabby. That was a good opportunity for you. Young, you were trying to figure it out. You on the drawing board. Yeah. Your head coach is seeing that. He's excited about that. I can only imagine. Now you have to go and tell him fantastic news for yourself, but for him, he's losing a good defensive coordinator, and actually in the process really had just lost two, with one retiring. Right. So, how did that conversation go? As a young guy, and the first time you got to walk in the office and say, hey, look, man, I got something I can't pass up on. How did you handle that?
Yeah, it was tough, because the one thing about it is Coach Thursman took a very strong chance and brought me in. Yeah. And we had we knew of each other, but it was nothing of like, I didn't talk to him every day or anything like that. And we developed a really good relationship. And then to that same guy believing in me to be a coordinator, like that's everything. Like, to have a belief of somebody like that, like a head coach believing in you. So when I got the news, like, it literally was we had to think about it. Like, I know some guy like, that's stupid. You ain't thinking about that. You going to Cincinnati. Like, I literally was just like with my wife, and just like, man, like, I don't want to let him down. Absolutely. Because of this. Yeah. It was just one of them things that when I brought it to his attention, of course, it's like, but he was like, man, you're going to take that job and you're going to crush this interview. And he was just so positive about taking it, and it made me feel so much better about the situation. But I literally didn't want to let him down. And it was hard to make that call to tell him that I know, and it was a bunch of media going on. I'm doing interviews about, taking over for Coach Ricketts. And it was a lot of things going on that I had to I just slammed the party with that news. But at the same time, he was just overly excited for me. Yeah. And to this day, we keep in touch, and he's just so excited to see where this journey has came from. And I know that he feel like he's a big part of, that, which he is. If it wasn't for him and that opportunity, I don't know where I'll be at right now. So truly blessed for him.
Just a huge part of the story. And Once again, I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's something that, I had to have that conversation a few times early in my career, and it was, man, I was, my hands were sweating, I was just, and majority of all the conversations I'd ever had in those transitions, the coach supported me, and the one where the coach wasn't too excited about it, man, he's one of my best friends in the business now. It just was, we had to talk as men, and I think as a youngster in a profession, you can be intimidated from those conversations, and I think that's encouraging for people to see, like, even you, and that you were kind of nervous, you didn't want to let him down, and ultimately he ended up supporting you on that journey. So now you get the job, you've interviewed, you killed it, you get named the outside linebackers coach there at Cincinnati. You talked about that unique experience of having your own room, and all of a sudden you're looking around. These guys are, I don't want to say D3 guys, but they're guys that maybe their aspirations, their end goals for coming there is not to walk out and, be playing on the NFL field. It's to go and get a degree and have a great experience and all that kind of stuff. Now you're at Cincinnati, where those guys still want to get degrees, don't get me wrong, but hey, that light at the end of the tunnel is a little bit of that NFL dream. How did you adjust or adapt, or did you even have to?
Yeah, I mean, it was just a moment of, realization, like, hey, these guys dang near was paying to play at college, whereas like now it's a lot of, I won't say guys taking it for granted, but they just, like me at Michigan, I'm not saying that I took Michigan for granted, but you just don't know the great stuff you have. And just reminding those guys of like the opportunity, like I literally was just in a room full of guys that would give everything to be where y'all at right now. They just can't, they don't have it. And really that's what I started to just try to figure out different ways to motivate every single guy individually, and how can I make that guy realize where he's at and how he can maximize his talent, his time, his opportunity. And that's really what it was all about. Was like, hey man, I got to get these guys to realize, man, this is a big time stuff where you at right now, and you need to take advantage of it. Don't waste a day, don't waste a moment, an opportunity. And that's kind of what it was for me, was like that transition of realizing, like, all right, I got to figure out the way to maximize, because there were some guys that had way less talent that will run through a brick wall and pay to do it just because they wanted to just play the game of football. And I wouldn't allow these guys to not take advantage of that.
Now, you guys went on to have a successful run, Fenway Bowl appearance that year. What, I guess I'll ask the question, what was your takeaway from that season in regards to your development, as you're going through the profession? Because here's the thing that you can easily forget in this story. Man, you're 2 years into – this is your second year having your own room. I mean, I guess you can count the Detroit Loyola, early in your career. But, I mean, you're a young coach, man, coaching at the P5 level. You got your own room. What was your takeaway in regards to your development so far?
Yeah, I mean, that was just like my first real moment of college football, like a Power 4 level, and just like how everything is working. And, Coach Fick just being so successful at Ohio State, seeing how he runs his program, seeing all these things. And I just really felt like, I'm just really seeing everything and how everything is working. And it's such a culture that's built, and you get pulled out of one place and put in the next place. And then it's a new culture that you got to kind of get all behind. And it was just like, wow. I mean, it was just kind of really eye-opening, to say the least. Like, I felt like where my head was at the time, like I was just really young. And what I mean by that is, I don't think that I was almost nervous to be my complete self, if you get what I'm saying, because all of this happened so fast. Yeah. And it's like, I don't think I should be overstepping, or not so much overstepping, but I just wasn't prepared to be that guy, in my opinion. And that's hard for me to admit that. But when you go through the years and you play yourself back, it's like, I could have did more. And it's not that I wasn't giving max effort. It was just that if I'm here to connect with these guys and get the best out of them, well, I got to completely do that. And at that time, you just kind of seeing stuff happen, and you just trying to like piece it all together. And it happened fast. Like, I got there in the springtime where, like, spring ball was rolling. Like, it ain't the off-season transition. And then it's a group that went to the college football playoff last year. So it was just a lot of different pieces that I had to wrap my head around. But like I say, this is what I want to do. This is what I realized that this is where my true passion is. So it wasn't hard to okay, boom, all right, this is where I got to be, this is how I got to get there. These little different things that I'm going to take and apply to my players. So that wasn't difficult, but it definitely was for me a moment where I'm like, kind of bright eyed to like, okay, let me focus up and let's get active now. And that's kind of what happened. So,
yeah. The coolest thing about this is you obviously go look at your career trajectory. You continue to do great things. And so I appreciate your transparency, because I remember I think I was 26, 27. I was a full-time FBS position coach. I was young. I was on those lists that popped up all around. And I remember sitting in staff meetings for a guy I played for a guy I GA'd for. And I just got promoted. And I'm like, man, do I interject at this point? I was having this dialogue with myself. Man, do I speak up? I mean, these guys been doing it together. Like, this is what I say, but I don't want to say it. I was sitting in staff meetings, just sitting on my hands, just, not knowing when to talk. And it took some time for my, I don't want to say confidence, because everywhere else the confidence was fine, but in those staff meetings, I felt like, do I keep shutting up like I did when I was a GA? Or, or do I start to interject? And, I think having some of those real conversations, because it's very easy to look at you and be like, dude, you were Michigan and Houston and Tulane, Cincinnati, you had it all figured out. But even a part of it, man, there's moments where you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to, reflect and see where you fit in and how you can be better and all those good things. And so I appreciate you sharing. And then obviously in 23, there's some type of transition where you're going to be a senior defensive analyst at Tulane. I know at some point Fickle goes to Wisconsin. I don't know where this all fits. How did the transition come about to where you even, end up taking another job?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of one of those real moments. Like, everybody got real moments in this profession. Yeah. And, we are playing, I forgot, it's ironic, we're playing Tulane. Okay. I tell Coach Fritz all the time, it's y'all fault that I'm at Tulane, whatever. If y'all wouldn't have whooped on for Cincinnati. But anyway, we come out the locker room and, you kind of see, coach or whatever like that. And, he ended up sharing it with the staff that, he was probably going to take a job at Wisconsin. And in your mind, you like, shoot, let's do it. You know what I mean? Like, hey, let's go. Let's go. Like, hey, come on. And then the realness sets in. It's like, this guy's, going, and it's certain people going with him and all of that. And, you, again, just young in the game, man, just don't know how that stuff works. Yeah. And you realize, like, all of a sudden you tied to him, in your structure of everything. Because I'm young, I'm no agent, I'm just maneuvering. I'm just blessed to be here. You know what I mean? And so it was kind of like a wake-up call. And eventually, I was able to get an opportunity with them there, but I was already, I had my connection. I was at Tulane. Wildly enough, the way I made it to Tulane, it wasn't a guy that was like a Michigan man or just like that connection pipeline. I had a guy that came to Michigan when I was a GA for just a year. He was a defensive coordinator at Georgia Tech. He got let go. Nate Woody, he's the defensive coordinator at Army now. And got really close with him along the process. And he connected me with a guy named Shea Wood, who's now the defensive coordinator at Texas Tech. And, that's how I ended up down there, was that opportunity. Now, the same wife that's been doing everything for me, that was a hard sell. To be able to tell her, like, we're from the Midwest and all that, and there's a job opportunity as a senior defensive analyst down in Louisiana, New Orleans, to be specific. And this is where we need to be. And that was one of those tough moments. But at the end of the day, it was, I really take pride in our relationship, and that was some growth right there. That not only I felt like this was the right move, she backed me. And, like I said, took over from a financial standpoint and just grinded. And we moved down there. And it's the best decision I ever made, was doing that, because now this got me in contact with one of the best head coaches in football history, of Willie Fritz. And I had no idea about who he is and what he was about. But man, I'm just so thankful to have made that decision, even though it wasn't. It felt right in my heart, but at the time, on paper, that decision wasn't right. But we completely went about doing it and was completely vested to that situation, and it paid off in the long run for sure.
Yeah, and I like to shed some light, as much as you're willing to share, in regards to, kind of this blank space in this story to where it's fantastic news, right? Like you said, let's go. We're going to Wisconsin. Let me pack my bags, get my jackets and everything, make sure we're good to go. And then all of a sudden, I mean, you still got some time left. You still got some games to play. Like even if you were initially going with them, I'm sure a lot of staff stayed on for that bowl game. Are you just sitting there in the dark all this time? You pick the phone up and call Fickle and say, "Hey, man, what? Am I coming? Am I not? What's kind of happening in that frame where you're waiting? You're also having some of this other dialogue. Like, how did you navigate that part? Because I feel like that. We always talk about the guys getting fired. We always talk about the guys getting hired. But I think a lot of times, man, the people that get forgotten in this process is when that guy gets hired and he leaves that school. Man, it's a handful of guys that don't always get to make the trip. And you have a great season and you're having the time of your life, and next thing you know, you don't got a job. That's kind of a crazy thing that can happen in this business. But just from your point of view, how did that go down?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, you're so like I'm young in this profession and just everything that goes in it. So you just think it's just everything is, you know what I mean? Like it just moves the way it's supposed to move, and that's not all the way it goes. And it was just one of those moments that, you're waiting on something and it's not happening and you don't know why. And then you start playing it back. Like, did I mess something up or did I do something wrong? But it's just timing. It's not, not meant at that moment. So, it's a humbling situation. And that was something I really needed, you know what I mean? And it really put me in a place where, at that moment, like anything any situation I was in, I'm going to be unapologetically myself in every which way. And because of that, that's how I kind of maneuver from here on out. Like if it ain't going to go the way I think it should go at the end of the day, it's going to be on my terms, not on like me sitting back and trying to analyze the situation and, should I say something, should I not? Nah, I'm going to just give everything I have to whatever it is and just really be my best self. And that's what I feel like I needed to go through in that situation. And like I said, yeah, you just kind of sit around and the weird thing about it is we ended up playing Louisville in the bowl game, and that's who took over the program with Satterfield. It was a whole awkward deal. Like you got their staff in here and they looking at you looking at them, you prepare for Louisville. It's just like, what are we doing right now? But at the end of the day, man, that's just a profession. You know what I'm saying? And those things are going to happen. And I just didn't know that at the time. I didn't know how that happens. And, all of a sudden, like you might be, without a job all of a sudden, and you had no idea why. We won 9 games that year and, just God decided to level up and get to the Big Ten. And, you probably do the same thing if you was in that same situation. Right. You know what I mean? So you don't fault them for it, but it's tough. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you bring in, your flock, your family with you, and they kind of go as you go. That ain't something that's comfortable. You saying to them, coming home after a game that, hey, coaches, whatever it may be, but we ain't gonna be here.
Yeah. So, you got to figure it out. And just before we move on to kind of your Tulane stop, how important, and it might be hard for you to say now because you're still a really young guy in a profession, but how important was it to have some of those experiences early on, right? Where you go to Michigan 3 years as a GA, you had a standout career, and you're sitting there in 21 and people aren't hiring, and you're sitting here late in the game and your best option or only option at that point is Hope College. And you're sitting here like, trying to figure that out. Next thing you know, you go and get the promotion of a lifetime, being able to go to Cincinnati as a full-time coach, and you're 9-3, life is good. And next thing you know, you kind of left in what you ultimately said that Fickle reached out to you and had an opportunity for you there, but like for a while you're kind of just lost a little bit in regards to what was next for you. Just how important was it to have some of those early experiences to recognize this is what the profession is?
Yeah, it was extremely important. I had to go through everything that I had to go through, and that's what shaped me to be who I am. And if I don't go through one of those tough moments or those tough times, I'm not in the place that I am today. But I needed it because it just changed my perception on a lot of different things. Like hope, just really truly being having gratitude towards not only the kids you get to encounter every day, but the staff, the people that do all this type of stuff, you know, having to do those type of things and just, you know, that was a big moment, you know what I'm saying? And then, you know, with Cincinnati playing big time ball and just it just made me really appreciate this profession. And it really made me feel like anytime I have an opportunity to completely just be my best version of myself. And that's really what it was all about. But I'm not where I'm at today if I don't go through any one of those different stories. And of course, there's many stories along the way. It's jobs you didn't get. It's conversations you had on the phone of, hey, dude, man, we're going to hire you if this happens, and it don't happen. And it's just like, it's so many things that happens that it's like you callousing up, right? You callousing up to the point where, all right, I know how this thing is rolling. We're going to be all right.
Absolutely. Now you get the opportunity to go to Tulane as a senior defensive analyst. And there's a lot of things that kind of come with that. Obviously, you're a full-time P4 coach at Cincinnati. I can only imagine you took a little bit of a pay cut in regards to taking a job like this. Your responsibilities, been able to lead a room, you know, all the stuff kind of changes, man. That's pretty drastic. But once again, you say this was an important stop because you do get to establish a relationship with Coach Willie Fritz, who's absolutely phenomenal from everything that I've gotten to know about him and meet him a few times. You know, what if you had to label that year or put a title on that year? You know, what would you call that year at Tulane?
For me, I mean, it was kind of one of those things. I even told my wife, man, I'm going to give everything I have. I know it's not the best situation, you know, right now, but it was just kind of all or nothing. And it really showed me, you know, what I'm truly, truly capable of. It wasn't a title, I should say, that it wasn't anything about it, but I just truly immersed myself in the people down there, the kids, the culture, Coach Fritz, his message. Trying to be the best possible asset for him, for my defensive coordinator at the time, all of those different people, and just everything that I got, just give it up. You know what I mean? For the betterment of the program, the betterment of the team, and like I say, it was just kind of one of them things that, you know, I don't know how much time I got down here, but while I'm down here, it's everything I have, and that's what I did. And like I say, it paid off, and it wasn't because I was doing it for some type of gain, or hopefully I can do this. And I didn't know that would happen, you know, ultimately would happen. It happened because I was given everything that I had. And, you know, it was almost like a year-long interview. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's essentially what it was. And I wasn't thinking about it like that, but he didn't promise me nothing. Right. You know what I'm saying? It happened to work out that way.
Now, let me ask you this part. And I'm chuckling. I don't know. It might not be funny to you at all, but obviously, he walks into the you know, I think it was a little bit later than walking into a locker room. But at some point, he walks in there and he says, all right, guys, I'm taking a job at University of Houston. Just 1 year ago, you sitting there hitting that same conversation. Like, were you like, man, here we go again? Or, you know, what was it like to hear that? And then, how quickly were y'all able to talk about you landing at U of H with him?
Yeah, it was, man, it was the same emotions when I heard it, and it's just like, all right, here we go again. My wife, she, you know, it's just like, all right, what are we about to do? Right. You know, who's coming in? And like, I mean, you know, she became like a mastery on social media. Like, she knew he was getting that job before. She looking at the tweets. She compared, all right, he going there, whatever. But it was a complete opposite as far as, you know, at Cincinnati. Like, you are in the know. It's like you either in the know or you're not. If you ain't nobody talking to you, it probably ain't happening. But it was pretty swiftly. You know, he let us know the guys that he was going to take, and it was just such a great feeling. And then he told me that it was going to be a position coach as well, and all of those different factors. And it was a blessing. And then just everything just kind of hit, like all the things that I've done to get there, how I got there. Because I realized like what also come with that, you know, this story is the way from an outside perspective people look at you, right? Like you go from being at Cincinnati to not, well, something wrong with you. He ain't good at what he do. Right. You know what I mean? That's the outside perception where they might not necessarily know the story. So it's like dealing with all of those things, which I really don't care too much about what people think, but still, it's still an element of things. And, you know, that also is a representation of my family. You know what I'm saying? So it just kind of was like one of those moments where, you know, I took a second to just appreciate just the opportunity and just fully, it just showed me the type of ball coach that I really could be. Mm-hmm. and just the belief that he had. Somebody that's been coaching so long. Like, I have no connection with Coach Fritz at all. He's been the head coach for over 30 years, and for him to believe in me to be a position coach at the Power 4 stop for him for the first time in his career, it just meant the world to me. Yeah. And it just made me feel like from that moment, I'm not letting that dude down. Like, I'm going to make sure I'm going to be the best possible position coach I'm going to be. Like, I'm striving to be that, for him. And that's what I did. And it was just a great opportunity, and it was a great moment for my family, my wife, my kids. It was awesome.
Yeah, man. I mean, like I said, that's the beauty of the podcast, in my opinion, because I think people in the business and have spent time in the business wouldn't look at your resume and maybe come to that conclusion because they know the business. They have those same calluses, they have the same kind of things that have happened to them. But maybe somebody looks at it and says, "Oh, dang, he didn't go to Wisconsin. Oh, dang, he's not a position coach at Tulane." But to be able to go down there and have an impact on a guy that you didn't know, if that doesn't happen, there was probably some development and growth. We didn't talk about kind of how you approach that job from an X and O standpoint and just sharpening your tools. But I'm sure over that year you became a much better coach, just being able to sit back and look at the game differently than you've looked at it since you GA'd, and but have acquired more knowledge in between those times. So everything happens for a reason. That's such a cliche thing, but you kind of look back on it. You're at an awesome place, great opportunity in the Big 12 at the University of Houston, and you're not with that guy if maybe that you get the Wisconsin job. I don't think you would be. I'm pretty sure you'd be sitting at Wisconsin right now, and who knows what happens from that point in time. So everything happens the way that they're supposed to, man. And I know when you apply for the 35-year journey, your story was super inspiring, super dope. Coach Etheridge and a couple other guys that I've known in the business, man, had a lot of great things to say about you. And so I'm happy you had that part to decided to apply. So with that being said, in 25 this past year, you were part of our 35 and 35 program. Just talk a little bit about your experience and why you would encourage others to be a part of that.
Yeah, man, this is an amazing opportunity. It's an awesome group of guys, and just what really got me was just the stories that you hear from other coaches, head coaches and position coaches, and just everything. And then you just realize, like, you ain't that different than a lot of them. Everybody got these stories, and it's just really about how you approach every single day. But just the opportunities that was given, the people that, we met, all of the way it was set up. I feel like I really, truly grew as far as my mental standpoint of how this profession works from other guys and other stories. And also the kind of the brotherhood you kind of, build a little bit with that, because those guys are that's who you're coming up with. And, I done seen, Dexter from, in the DC at Texas State, we played at the Chargers together. And I'm like, this dude looks a lot familiar. And I realized he cut his dreads off. And now I didn't see him a bunch of times since then. He's just a real cool guy. And it's just a lot of those guys that truly have a passion and a devotion to this game, and just hearing their stories. And, it's the next generation of coaches, and just being, close to them. Like I was listening to a podcast with Mike Tomlin and got the other coaches on there, but it was a bunch of them that were in a part of that same group, and they kind of came up together. And you just hear the stories, and you hear the things that they share to one another, and that's what it's all about. Is you kind of created that moment to have that as we continue to come up, bounce ideas off of one another. It's amazing setup, and I encourage anybody to apply to that who has any desire to coach in this profession.
Yes, sir, man. Well, we appreciate you kind of sharing your experience and really sharing your story, man. I really enjoyed that. I think on paper, on anybody, you don't really get the full story, and that's kind of the beauty of sitting down and doing this. So I appreciate you sharing with everybody, man. And we'll definitely be rooting you guys on as you approach a play here soon, and then look forward to seeing you in Charlotte in 26. All right.
For sure, sounds good. I appreciate the time.
All right, man. Have a good one.
All right.
When communication counts, trust the headsets trusted by the best. From high schools to the biggest college programs, CoachComm keeps coaches connected and teams prepared to win. Learn more at CoachComm.com.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. If you'd like to learn more about this week's episode, head over to AFCA.com. There, you can access every episode and find corresponding show notes. Remember, you can catch every episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm on wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, we'd love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your feedback helps us improve and grow. Keep up with the latest news by following us on social media. Connect with us at Inside the Headset and remember to tag us when you share your favorite episodes. For more updates on all things AFCA, be sure to follow the @WeAreAFCA social media accounts. If you're not a part of the AFCA community yet, visit AFCA.com to join thousands of NFL, college, and high school coaches nationwide and across the globe. Elevate your coaching game with an AFCA membership. You'll gain exclusive access to the annual AFCA convention, magazine, digital library, and AFCA Insider email. Stay up to date with the latest stories and news on the AFCA website. More than just a convention, the AFCA offers continuous education, guidance, networking, and more. Celebrate the past and shape the future with the AFCA. It's about fostering exceptional coaches who create outstanding teams and even better individuals. Invest in your skills and make a lasting impact today by engaging with the AFCA. Your journey starts here.